Hello my dear gardening friends! Q&A number 2 about roses and everything gardening. First question would be from Daria. Hey Olga, great video! I actually would like to ask something regarding spacing for rose hedging. I'm thinking of having a rose hedge with different varieties of David Austin roses, and some of them are slightly different width-sized, but I also like them to have a bit of space to breathe. For example, Lady of Shalott is 125 centimeters wide, while something like Queen of Sweden is 90 centimeters wide. Should spacing be about 55 or 60 centimeters then? And then, with roses that are 125 centimeters wide only, should there be only 45 or 55 centimeters apart? A packed question, Daria. There would be a packed answer with a lot of points of view to look at the answer. So here we go. By the way, here's a video I did on roses as growing them as rose hedges in the garden. Daria, that video might be interesting to you. And when we consider, general suggestion is, if we consider roses for hedges, the general advice would be to choose the same variety of roses. And why is that? Well, roses are plants, and plants do compete with other plants for air, for sun, for nutrients, for water. Roses are not an exception, and they are heavy feeders. Another thing about roses is they don't really like competition because they do need so much from soil, food and nutrients and water. They love sun, so they're really not happy with competing plants. And if you are going to introduce different varieties with different growing habits, heights and widths, you're going to you will have to be basically a plant police yourself. You will have to trim healthy roses for them not to take over not weaker roses, but let's say smaller roses, which are not taking a lot of space, because healthy varieties and bigger varieties of roses 100% will try to take over the space over smaller varieties. And then I'm not sure if I would be a happy pruner, pruning away these beautiful, wonderful, strong new shoots, which are stronger roses are going to produce, just to give space to smaller roses to flourish. Also, we have to look what is happening underneath the soil. I was the other day when I was at Master Gardening program. Master gardeners who are teaching us, volunteers, they were talking about these new developments where scientists are going inside the soil and they are studying how plants share nutrients. Ooh, something fell. That's my microphone. Excuse me. So, scientists are studying how plants share nutrients underneath the soil. And in that particular book, scientists pay attention to roots of trees. And they came to interesting discoveries that the stronger trees would take nutrients first, and there would be certain mechanisms where the weaker trees would not be allowed to take nutrients before the stronger roots. Very interesting. So imagine you have something like, oh, my computer died, something like, let's say, Lady of Shalott, which is a fairly tall shrub of almost 5 feet, 4.5, 5 feet. And then it is going to be a bully against Queen of Sweden, definitely. And what are you going to do? A root trimming of Lady of Shalott, because you don't want Lady of Shalott to take all the nutrients from poor Queen of Sweden. And believe me, I have 2 Lady of Shalotts in my garden. That's as close as I can get to the hedge on my fairly small garden lot. And after 10 years, one rose clearly is outperforming another. And they're growing in the same environment. There's a little difference in the amount of sun one bush receives. Maybe the difference is half a year a day, but that is enough to put that bush in disadvantaged spot that another bush is taking over. It's getting bigger, stronger, And my Lady of Shalott, which is growing closer to the house, has smaller stems this year. So I probably will have to be the pruner of healthy stems on my healthy and big Lady of Shalott to make sure that those two coexist peacefully together. Now, Daria, imagine your big, nice, beautiful hedge of roses, and all of them are growing for first maybe several years, okay? But then the fight and survival begins, and you have to come in and trim. So I would think twice before doing different roses. Maybe if I would not want to see this monotonous one type of roses, especially if the hedge is very long, probably I will say I would plant 3 or 4 roses of the same variety, and then I will go to next variety, 3 or 4 roses of that variety. And usually the recommendation for the hedge would be to give a nice breathing distance, would be overlapping of 1/3 of mature widths. I planted my Lady of Shalotts 18 inches apart. And because there are just 2 of them, looks like they're doing fine. Well, this latest development is, which I have to face this coming spring. So that's my answer to Daria. A lot to think about, right? Next question is from Lindsay. How do you deadhead and spray your big climber, the generous gardener? I will be planting 2 of them on an arch like yours this spring. Thank you for the inspiration. You are welcome. Well, good news is the generous gardener is a disease-resistant rose. Here in New England, I am fighting black spot because we have humid climate, and black spot is very well spread here. But my generous gardener is not touched by black spot all the way till the end of the season, and then it only loses several leaves. So believe me or not, I am really spraying just the bottom part of it, and I'm leaving the top part untouched because the generous gardener is healthy. And then as for deadheading, once my generous gardener is covered with blooms, I let it go into hips, and then at the end of first blossoming season, I just take a ladder and I deadhead it with one big scoop. And then the second time when generous gardener is blooming, I leave hips alone. Sometimes last year, I remember I have 3 generous gardeners in my garden. So one went to hips and I didn't have time to deadhead it. And guess what happened? Squirrels deadheaded it for me, so I never ended up with beautiful hips. So good news is, generous gardener is very healthy, and if you don't spray it, it's not going to suffer a lot. Mindy's channel asked, do you cover any of your hydrangeas? If so, how and when and why? Well, in front of the house, I have several types of different hydrangeas growing. The biggest show is devoted to big leaf mophead hydrangeas. I have 5 of them. Then I have smooth leaf, 3, I believe, and oak leaf. I have 1 oak leaf hydrangea at the back. So the biggest steal of the show usually is my big blue mophead hydrangeas. But the problem is that mophead hydrangeas genetically are not equipped to withstand cold weather in New England. And since I'm just on the borderline of zone 6-7, my mophead hydrangeas performance depends very much how severe late winter is. So one year we had a very light winter, and usually when I watch my hydrangeas in the front through the winter, I see that they keep the buds all the way till February well. And then if in February we have very cold, zappy, freezing winds and like deep temperature coming in just for several days, I lose all the buds. And then my hydrangea blooms very sporadically and not at all. But there was one year when I just started this channel, or a year before that, I believe, and I managed to video it, when there was no freezing condition in February and my hydrangeas survived. Just look at this show, right? So hydrangeas in our climate, zone 6, They do need protection from winter, and I don't do anything about it. There are reasons for it, because my hydrangeas are growing at the front of my house, so I don't want my house to look like a collection of blankets and bins and cages with leaves. So I kind of stopped worrying about it. So if the weather is bad, if the February has that bad freeze, I let it be, and my hydrangeas are not blooming as well, and hoping that next year my hydrangeas will be, because it looks like our winters are getting better and better. Not better and better, I shouldn't do that. I should say warmer and warmer. So, since my front yard, I developed that, that strip of land which separates the road from the sidewalk, it is a perfect garbage catcher and leaf catcher, so all winter. Just look at this. This is how I leave my front yard, because I'm tired of collecting leaves, and I have to collect garbage, but I'm not collecting leaves. And there would be another reason for it. I'm kind of hoping that those leaves will coat my hydrangeas into good dormancy, and they will keep it fairly warmish for it to survive those late winter freezes. So that's how my front yard, talking about curb appeal, is during winter. And then when spring is approaching, I do a very thorough cleaning, and I look at my hydrangea buds. I just took a look the other day, and they do look damaged. We had that big snow and really cold temperatures and winds, and I think that the buds are damaged. The good news is, for Lindsay, if she wants to grow hydrangeas in zone 6, where hydrangeas don't perform, they lose their buds to cold winds and cold temperatures, and they don't bloom at all or bloom very sporadically. The good news is that there are several types of hydrangeas which are designed now coming on the market, which are designed to withstand cold temperatures. And here they are. The first one is All Summer Beauty, all the way to zone 5. Well, for the beginner gardeners, mop-head hydrangeas set their buds in the fall previous year, and then those buds overwinter through the winter, and then those buds are blooming. So if winter kills those buds, hence there is no bloom. Or if you do the trimming in spring on mop-head hydrangeas, you throw your beautiful blooms into the garbage. So don't do that. Next one would be Nikki Blue, which is 4-feet shrub. It's the most common mop-head hydrangea. And why it is suitable for colder zones is because it might produce blooms on new shoots coming in the middle of summer. So even if you have in cold areas, you're dying to grow hydrangeas, like me, even if the cold weather is there, the hydrangeas will still produce some blooms. Next one is Madame Émile Moelier, a hardy mop-head form. Heavy production of pure white flowers, grows all the way to 5 feet tall, and also is suitable for colder zones. And the last one would be Blue Wave. It's a lace cap hydrangea. Beautiful. I would have it in my garden if I would have space. It's a big hydrangea, lace cap, and it's good all the way to zone 5. So if you don't want to be guessing if my hydrangeas are going to bloom or not, do yourself a favor and invest into hardier hydrangeas. Amanda Ruth, do you need to defoliate your roses when you live in places with mild winters? We don't get enough cold weather where I live to trigger a dormancy that causes leaves to drop. Well, I wouldn't be know-it-all for... I'm not know-it-all to begin with, but I wouldn't know a lot about roses growing in hot climate, because I don't garden in those climates, but I do know from reading interesting articles and books growing roses in warmer climates that rosarians do force roses into dormancy. They defoliated just before trimming them in the middle of winter, and that forces rose to go, at least in a short period of time, into dormancy, and that's enough, that several weeks they are enough to give that rose a little bit of rest and start producing new leaves. But again, I wouldn't be an expert on that. Beauty with Dani asked a question. Best roses for 80-90 Fahrenheit degrees Texas heat and southwestern full sun. I'm in zone 8B and think David Austin roses may not work out for me. The roses would be going into containers, not in ground too. Best flowers for me. Well, I would reconsider David Austin roses. There are plenty of there to choose from, good to zone 10. So they are equipped to withstand strong weather, strong hot sun. And of course, Texas is southwestern region with dry, arid condition. No black spot, but there are other problems in it. So I don't know the roses, but I know a person who knows. He is David Kuklielski. That's how I will write it down on the screen. He's a very famous rosarian, and he comes up with the list of roses which can withstand hot, arid conditions of Texas. And here it is. Those are not David Austin roses, but I would encourage Beauty with Dani to still reconsider and look into David Austin collection. But if not, then this choice of roses would be suitable to grow in hot, arid climate. Jersey Girl. Hi, Olga. I love Lady of Shalott shrub rose too, and it's such a great performer. Do you have any experience with the Lady of Shalott climbing rose variety? I'm looking for a short climber to put over a 7-foot arch in a very sunny spot. I saw your video about generous gardener, which looks beautiful, but I'm wondering if it's too big for 7-foot arch. And then Jersey Girl is really looking for recommendations for something shorter. Well, shorter varieties which David Austin offers are sold out, unfortunately, for Jersey Girl for this year. What she can do, she can wait for next year or look into these varieties of roses, which I would recommend. Of course, there are thousands and thousands of roses, and who knows them all? Nobody. We just have our little collections, and our mutual knowledge can create a database of rose knowledge. So if Jersey Girl wants to post that question on my Facebook gardening club, by the way, the name is Olga Carmody Gardening Club. It's a group, it's a closed group. And thank you, by the way, everybody who went there and joined that group. Wow, you have such great gardens. Keep posting. I love to look at all those beautiful blooms, especially when my garden right now looks still dreary and not alive. So Jersey Girl, post your questions there and let's see what people have for the answer for you. As for Lady of Shalott, you can buy Lady of Shalott as a shrub, and when in the middle of summer it starts shooting those long octopus shoots, you can train them to go and grow as a climber. So you can successfully train your Lady of Shalott to become a climber, even if you bought it as a shrub. I never trained my Lady of Shalott as a climber because I don't had to have that big space there. Maybe one year I will, but I do have videos about it. So Jersey Girl, check it out. Katie DC. This is probably a horribly unfair question to ask. But if you could only have one rose in your garden, what would it be and why? Love your videos. Thank you. Well, Katie, it is a horrible question because my collection of roses is so small in comparison to everything what is available. And so many people talk about their favorites. And of course, we garden in different regions. And if rose is growing well here in New York region, it's not going to perform well in Texas. So we have favorites by region, favorites by continents, favorite by countries. And it would be, you know what, this year in summer, I'm planning to go to New York Rockefeller Rose Garden, and I'm going to take you with me, by the way, there. I'm going to observe different roses there. and probably come up with my favorite from that trip. I don't know, but we will see. I don't have the answer for that question. Roses are magnificent, and my collection of roses is just what, 20-25 roses, which is tiny small. You guys have, some of you have wonderful collection of roses. So again, if you want to share that information on Olga Carmody Gardening Club on Facebook group, you're welcome to do so. I will be very happy to read. So that's it. This is the end of Q&A question. Have a lovely day, and I will see you next time. Happy gardening!